And now, an apology from Meaningful Times with Friends to Jason USA, CEO of Chibson USA, proud sponsor of Meaningful Times with Friends. We here at Meaningful Times with Friends wish to issue an apology to Jason USA, CEO of Chibson USA, for the sound issues with the Chibson ad for the mini jumbo hand pick. There are very few left in stock. By the time this is out, it may be sold out. I want to let people know, go to Chibson.com again for the remaining mini jumbo hand picks and the upcoming, as yet to be released, Chibson USA mini jumbo hand pick. You can also get 3 colors for different tones of chib grips. Get those again also at Chibson.com. You can follow Chibson on Instagram at Chibson_USA or on TikTok or YouTube at Chibson USA. And now here is the corrected version of the Chibson ad for the mini jumbo hand pick.
Studies have shown that if you use a small pick, you're 10 times more likely to hate tone. By 2025, small picks won't even exist anymore. Chibson and Dunlop have teamed up to bring you the mini jumbo hand pick. Size actually does matter. On stage with one of those small picks, no one's gonna take you serious. And everyone knows small picks are going extinct. You call yourself a tone chaser and you have one of those small picks, get chased by tone with the jumbo hand pick.
Also this week, we have a guest, and unfortunately, during the entire episode that we had him on, we didn't get a chance to promote his upcoming and previous released projects. This is Dan Lactose of the bands Spaz, Shadow People, Funeral Shock, Grand Invincible, Dank Goblins, and Miklos Leg. You can check out Grand Invincible's most recent release on Iron Lung Records. Dank Goblins also will be on Iron Lung Records, and check out Miklos Leg, which will be coming on Gerp City and Mega Cut Records soon. So keep an eye out for that. But just wanted to plug our buddy's upcoming projects since he was a great guest. And here is the episode for you now.
Come in. 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 Come in.
We're back with Meaningful Times with Friends. Ramshackle Dan, Jason, Nathan from Newark, and there's a fifth. You, I don't know if anybody noticed. If anybody who watches the show notices, normally there's only 4 in this Brady Bunch grid, but we are doing something different. We have a guest panelist joining us, and it's a second Dan, but it's a real Dan. This is Dan Lactose.
From one Dan to another, welcome, and maybe like you and I can hook up later, and you can show me how to use the camera because I'm having issues again. So if we can maybe like FaceTime or something later, you could help me out. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll give you some tips.
Beautiful.
First time here, and he's got his camera down. Look at that. Like it. So welcome, Dan. As always, this is our first time doing a guest panelist, and the main requirement I've found for inviting a guest panelist is they are a fan of the show. And so I want to thank Dan for enjoying our little weird conversation fest we have here every other week. And we've been getting good feedback from a lot of odd but very cool sources. Like last night, I was at my secret society convention, and one of my good friends from there says, "Love the podcast." So anybody who's been telling me that, thank you. And if you haven't been telling me that, that's cool too. Anonymity's, all good. So before we get going on our on our main topics, we need to issue an apology. As always, anybody who knows our show knows that we are very sorry. So we want to make an apology for our topic last episode about the SF Doom Loop tour, because unfortunately we made a mistake. We were trying to be topical and relevant, and I think we got too topical and relevant, where we discussed the SF Doom Loop tour before it even had a chance to be canceled and turned into a carnival. I did put an update up top of the episode, but I don't think that's enough. I think an apology from the group. Who is responsible for that topic again, by the way?
That'd be Ramshackle Dan.
Right on. Okay, good. I want to make sure that's for the record.
I should apologize also, David, not to you naturally, but to the rest of the people. I know that I went on and on and on in an overly serious tone about the Doom Walk, leading up to the true causes of the condition of the city, which is obviously cyclists and dog owners. I should have stuck with that. I know that when you tune in to hear lengthy, monotonous lectures about topics none of you care about, you want to hear it and have rightfully come to expect it from Dave. So from now on, I will endeavor to stay in my lane. Number 2, time and attention, oxygen, vacuum in this room. I strayed. It was wrong. And for that, I am deeply sorry.
Apology not accepted.
Take that apology and stuff it. A woman did try to shoplift a lot of goods in the town of Chico, and her claim to the police was that you can't arrest me for it. The laws have changed. I now can take this shit, and the police arrested her, which was I'm just saying, if you're going to commit a crime, especially if the police are contacting you about that crime, probably best not to tell them they can't arrest you. But yeah, they arrested her. She had $1,200 worth of merchandise from some fucking shithole shop, and they were like, "No, bitch, we can arrest you," and they did. So,
well, you said that's Chico?
That was Chico, California.
Chico is like gun racks and country music.
It's a college town more than it's not just Hicks.
Chico is one of the most uncomfortable places on earth because it is an intersection between 3 cultures. One is kind of a very red state country music culture. Then there's college students, and then there's like whacked out meth heads like roaming around on BMX bikes. And it's like this intersection of these 3 cultures. So I wouldn't try and shoplift there, is what I'm saying.
I think that Venn diagram's kind of a circle, isn't it?
Apologies to our audience again. We will table any topical subjects for at least a few weeks. All right, moving on. So again, we have a guest here today. So this is our first time. This is new territory, virgin territory for the Meaningful Times with Friends. So I wanted to give a chance for the friends that aren't familiar with our guest here, Dan Lactose, to ask some questions. I have a wonderful background for this all ready to go, and I can't fucking find it. There we go.
Whoa.
Stalker.
Yes.
Is that like Dave's version of 1 hour photo?
Yeah. Yeah, but there we go.
Yikes.
The background for our guest, Dan Lactose, aka DJ Eons. You can see he's doing both in photos here. So, guys, did you have any questions prepared for our guest?
I do.
All right.
When you're in funeral shock, at what point did you realize Dave puking was going to become a regular occurrence?
It was a band we had together. I was in a band with Dan called Funeral Shock.
For a long time, actually, like 7 years. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe after the second or third time. But it became a thing. And, I got to say the best one that I can remember is we played in Redwood City at this bar kind of on a downtown street, like on the downtown strip. And we were on the second story, and the drums were set up against the windows that were on the front of the building overlooking the main drag. And at one point, Dave had to puke, and he just turned around and puked out the window of the building. At least that's how I remember it.
I don't think anybody was out there. There was a skirmish where one of the guys from the rap group body slammed another JP, who was a member of the band The Feldmans. I remember there was over there was a dispute. So
there was some domestic violence going down out in the front.
Feldman's a great band, terrible name, but a great band.
Yeah.
Yes, puking was a regular thing. About a year and a half it took to get out of the. It was just I never did anything that fast, and these guys played fast. Honestly, I never expected to even make the cut to be in the band because I just played drums on the weekends. I was a weekend warrior drummer, and then these guys, it was our first singer Jason who hit me up that Dan and Jason were going to start a band, and that they were looking for a drummer who wasn't in a million bands. And I could play drums, never was a drummer in a regular band. And I said, well, I'll try it out. And then Dan and I had a practice where we got together at the old practice space. I don't think it's no longer there, right?
I don't think it's there.
What's it called again? It was
Lennon Studios.
Oh yeah. That got sold.
Yeah, that's right. So we used to practice there hourly, pay for the 3 hours. It was a bargain, and but we got together, just me and Dan, which was pretty intimidating considering if you know Dan's previous band Spaz, which is very technical, a lot of short songs that feel long. I didn't think I was going to be able to keep up, even though they assured me we're playing dumbed down punk rock, like old school punk rock that's like the Misfits. Well, not like the Misfits, but like it was much more, it was fast, but it wasn't as technical. And then I just learned the chop beat. I figured out the chop beat in like a half hour, and then we wrote 2.5 songs.
I'm the weakest link in Spaz, so you shouldn't have been.
I don't know about that, but I don't think there are any weak links in Spaz in order to be in Spaz.
What's the origin of Lactose?
So I did a bunch of little projects with a friend of mine that I met in 7th grade. We'd do all these little, kind of improv bands, make up a name, make up songs, and we'd make little tape covers, but we wouldn't really distribute them outside of just our friend group. And he made one for some project we did, and for my credit, he wrote "Damn Lactose" because lactose intolerant. And I really liked that, so I just dropped the M and I just rode with the Dan Lactose. So I've had that name since I think maybe like 8th grade.
Nice.
And it was funny because ended up in a kind of a Twitter beef over some stupid band, and there was all these people kind of dogpiling me who didn't know who I was, and they were calling me Dan Lactose Intolerant, ha 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 ha. I'm like, yeah, and it's the fucking name.
That should be your full name, Dan Lactose Intolerant. Ha 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 ha.
What also was the origin of when you got into DJing, the DJ Eons?
Graffiti. I just started getting called DJ Eons, and it just stuck. That was my code name on the streets. But I was thinking about something last night to kind of tie it into you guys and like Newark. Back then, back kind of in the early 90s when I was really heavy into doing graffiti, is around the time I met Dennis. And so we were going over to skate that ditch that was off the side of the freeway when you're driving in across the bridge. And then we started kind of exploring around that area. And back then there wasn't really a lot of stuff. So we started bringing house paint out there and rolling out a whole wall and doing some stuff and then moving to another area. And I think because we weren't from there, we were just like, oh, this is totally safe. No one's going to see us or look out here. And went back years later, and it kind of had turned into a whole spot, where all these people had started painting in all these layers upon layers. And I was like, wow, we were the first guys, to roll out this wall. There was nothing on it previously. So I don't know if you guys have any connections to like that Newark graffiti scene, but it was kind of interesting to see how I guess we kind of developed some spots out there, not even being from the town.
That's cool.
This is the first I've ever heard of Dennis doing any graffiti.
Yeah, he was probably walking around with us more than actually doing it at the time.
Just kind of observing.
Posing.
Yeah, just hanging, you know. No, not posing. I mean, you know, it's like you went to a town where you knew somebody and you called them up. Hey, we're in town. What are you doing? You know.
I just wanted to have fun calling him a poser, a graffiti poser. Yeah.
Jason used to go around and with a big marker and put SPC all over stuff. I remember that.
And Jam Brady fan club.
Yeah.
Nice.
Jason, did you have a question?
I was just curious because at the time that you named your band Spaz, there wasn't as much of a. I mean, it's more of a British thing. I think the stigma of calling somebody Spaz is like it's a really bad word. I was just wondering if you got any shit or if you get any retroactive shit for naming your band Spaz.
Not yet. I think Lizzo took all the heat for us.
Can't say spaz anymore.
Yeah, that's totally right over my head. I've never even heard that.
Yeah, I think, like Jason said, I think it's more of a British thing. I don't think, because in America, it's like slang that all the kids are using, you know, I'm going to spaz on you. And, you know, I don't think in America the people are reacting the same way to it.
It always had like a very 80s kind of feel, like an 80s, like, you're a fucking spaz, dude. Like, I don't know. That's
Totally.
what I think of. Yeah.
And we would always look for samples in 80s movies, you know, where they said it. And I don't know, you know, I mean, just from a different era, I guess, you know.
It's a fair trade, right? I think the British got the better of that trade because we get to use spaz and they get to use cunt. So I think they got the better of that deal.
Yeah.
And you know what I see more than band photos? When I look up Spaz Band, all I find more is merch. Bootleg fucking merch.
Oh.
Yeah, it's more t-shirts.
Don't even get me started, man.
That's it's a sore spot. Don't want to bring it up. But yeah, it was, well, I mean, I did bring it up. My bad. But just because when I did the search, I'm like, where can are there any fucking band photos? There's just fucking shirts all over the place. So, yeah. Sucks, but and then
the shirt is iconic now, you know. It's crazy.
A show called This Fool on Hulu that actually has some comedians, one of which I do know, and I see some others that I've met here and there that are on it. But the main guy, Chris Estrada, he's a punk rock and hardcore fan, and he's in season 2 wearing a Spaz shirt in full conversation with Michael Imperioli, which is pretty cool. So. I always thought Michael Imperioli and you, Mr. Lactose, have kind of a similar vibe for some reason.
A Ginzo vibe. Yeah, I was kind of disappointed to find out that Chris Estrada is not Eric Estrada's son. So that was disappointing.
Is there any resemblance?
No, he would.
No.
So you'd mentioned Jason hitting you up. That tour where Dave got in a fist fight with the singer, was that entirely Dave's fault or just mostly Dave's fault?
Oh man, that's a pretty intense story actually. I wasn't there for it, so I didn't.
There, you were just in the backyard. Yeah.
I was in the backyard hanging out by the keg.
If there's fault to be made, I definitely created the straw of it with a joke that started at the beginning of our tour that said every lead singer has a little Axl Rose in him. It was just a joke, you know, but we were all kind of laughing about it for the most part in the beginning. And then at the end of the tour, when there were frustrations, Dan and our bass player Jeff were kind of steaming at our singer who was leaving early. There were tensions, and our singer wanted us to help move the other band's stuff into the van so they could leave early while that band was busy talking to girls. That's what I remember. and he was staring at us from an angle because he was behind a fence where we all were, and I just remember hearing "little help here," and I was trying to alleviate the situation when I said that joke again. Well, it's like I said, there's always a little Axl Rose in every lead singer, and people laughed, and that didn't help. But I didn't think anything was escalation. It wasn't really a fist fight. He just basically tried to attack me. The rumor was I got my ass kicked. I didn't. I got the side of my head punched in.
Specific.
Now that we're talking about it, I'm remembering that I was really, really pissed at Jason at that point of the night. Like, probably talking shit to him, like looking away from him. Like, I can't even look at you right now. And I probably am the reason why he got that upset, because I was just like, nah.
I was new on the tour, I was new to touring, so I was the tour virgin, and dare I say, I felt a little gaslit being the tour virgin. Like, Dave, you haven't been on the road before, so whatever.
I gotta mention that when I was standing in the backyard of the house, I think I was with some of the SMD guys, maybe Jerry from Excruciating Tear, and we were talking, and then the shit happened in the front yard, in the street in front, and the guy who came running back to tell me, like, hey, your band's fighting, is this guy named Richard Ramos, who was kind of a well-known LA, hardcore, grindcore dude who ran a label and stuff, and he just recently passed away a few weeks ago. So just mention that.
What was the name of his band?
None of Your Fucking Business.
Fucking Business.
Maybe.
All of these good band names, by the way.
Speaking of band names, I would like to say that you are like batting 1,000 for people biting your shit. Apparently, I saw on Twitter the Grand Invincible thing. What's that about?
Oh yeah, some guy came out with something called like Grand Invincible KGB, and it's like, even the artwork. We just did this album, and the cover is a collage of skulls that Luke did, and the artwork for this release, like, the art is over a collage of skulls. It's really weird. It's flattering that people like it enough to just take it.
Man. Well, to be fair, the other bite that was pretty major was not your band, but it was part of the crew, the scene to the Plutocracy bite that happened. But you did get in there with the Tsunami guy. I
wrote 2 not even words, and then there was an insane backlash.
Fam, that says enough right there.
Yeah, I wrote "Nah Fam," posted a picture of the image, and there was an insane backlash that I totally didn't expect. Spearheaded by some guy from a band called Scowl, who's like, I guess they're from Santa Cruz, and now they do Taco Bell ads, and they're trying to, say that they're a local hardcore band from the Bay Area. But one of those dudes was kind of led the charge on dissing me on Twitter, and then all the minions, came after me. And I got some amazing screenshots, and then, people that are my friends made some pretty great memes. I just didn't want to really fuel the fire, but there was a lot of, I was angry, but, people like Dave and a friend of mine from Florida, they really like made some funny material out of that shit.
You have young bands that I have no problem with, go off and do, whatever the fuck it is. But for those who don't know, there was an image that was straight up ripped off. Like they and I guess they call these now bites or rips.
Rips.
They were even arguing over the term.
I say bite because that's coming from graffiti, where you do something completely unoriginal. You steal somebody else's style or whatever, and so you're a biter, and that's like looked down upon. But nowadays we're in this weird kind of world with DIY music where bootlegging is accepted and biting is kind of not frowned upon.
You can just it's just plagiarizing, really.
Yeah, but I'm going to stick to the way I grew up because,
So
I'm
wait,
not gonna.
is biting in today's standard more like paying homage to somebody, or is it just straight up people copying somebody and not giving a fuck?
Yeah, more copying without the homage. You know,
Okay.
more like, oh, that's a great idea. You know, I'm just gonna take it.
Their thought is like it's like sampling, but it's not. I mean, sampling at least like kind of had the use of making something of their own with sampling. The image that was in question is a popular Plutocracy cover for an album called Sniping Pigs, which I mean I love the album and the album cover. And then they basically they had somebody redraw it note for note.
No, they didn't redraw it. They just scanned it and slapped the logo on top. They didn't redraw that shit, man. And that was my whole like complaint is, you know, my friend Stinkweed, that was his concept. He got the guy to do that drawing. I mean, that was 100% something he was really proud of. And so when I saw that, you know, he's not no longer with us, unfortunately, but I could just hear him in my ear, you know, and I was like, yeah, fuck this, you know. Like,
Yeah.
I gotta say something. But then, so after all the shit that happened, fucking Max buys the shirt. The drummer of Plutocracy.
Yeah, drummer.
So, you know what I mean?
Wow.
I was just like, alright.
Well, that's DIY in a nutshell. Think you're going to stand for something, and then somebody else is like, I like this.
Yeah.
Solidarity in the scene.
It's kind of funny because I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I went back to school shopping with her, and, you know, she's trying to be cool, coming to her own identity and everything, and, you know, I was talking to her about, you know, oh, this looks cool, you know, you want to get this? And she's like, Dad, you know, nobody wears this. You don't know what's cool. And I was like, look, shit that I did in high school, people are ripping off now. Your dad knows what's cool. Like, maybe someday you'll realize that.
Yeah, that's why I don't want kids, man. I'm like, all right. So now moving on from all of poor Dan's.
Hey, before we do that, I need to run to the bathroom again. Sorry. The word lactose is like some weird trigger. It's a weird psychosomatic issue.
This came up in our chat, our little text chat, courtesy of Nathan. And you can introduce this topic.
Okay, my wife and I eat at a restaurant here in Fremont. It's called Ambrose Butchery. Good spot. The guy who owns it or whoever owns it has good taste in music because they always have like this eclectic mix of like old punk rock, and you'll hear Susie and the Banshees, and you'll hear like ska and sometimes classic soul, maybe a little hip hop. But the music always comes to a screeching fucking halt when there's just this boring, plodding fucking song playing. And I always break out my phone and do a Shazam and be like, what the fuck is this? And every single time without fail, it's the fucking Grateful Dead. And I kind of always have had a beef with the Grateful Dead because there's certain things that you live in the Bay Area that people see as mandatory. And I hate shit that people say is mandatory. That's like a lifelong thing with me. And so it just got me thinking about bands that have awesome names, because Grateful Dead is a great band name, versus music, because their music is fucking terrible. Like, just from my perspective, it's boring. It almost puts me to sleep. I don't know why people would want to do drugs to it. Like, it would put me on a bad trip. It's so bad. So, and I don't know how much we want to discuss because there's 5 of us. So I'm just throwing that out there, you know, so each of us can take our turn with a band.
That's how it came up. Good names of shitty bands, and then also good bands with shitty names. So we asked the panel to come up with one of each. So we'll start off so we can end more on a positive. We'll start off with shitty bands with good names. So why don't we start off with you, Nate? What was your a good band with a shitty name, or no, a good shitty band, good name. Yeah.
Wait, okay, hold on, I'm confused. You want me to do my second one now? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Well, I didn't know if Grateful Dead was going to be your pick for the.
No, Grateful Dead is my pick for sure. So I'm sticking with that.
Somebody go next.
I'll go next. So I forget. You made it too complicated with which one first. So I'm just going to say a band that is at best a mediocre band with a name that is, I can't say it's necessarily that good, but it always makes me laugh, is a band called Little Bo Bitch, and that name, that name just it never fails to make me laugh when I think of it. Little Bo Bitch is such a stupid fucking name, but it's also kind of hilarious. And the band itself is just kind of like a boring, like whatever, like kind of fast rock, maybe slightly punk rock band. They changed their name to the Lonely Boys, which I think is more representative of the band itself. But yeah, so Little Bo Bitch. And then for a great band with a name that initially, I thought the name was so bad that I never wanted to listen to them. And then when I finally heard them, I was like, holy shit, this band's great. It was Babes in Toyland. I fucking hate their name so much, but they're such a great band. And then honorable mention, Severed Heads, one of my favorite bands of all time. They famously hate their name, but they kind of got stuck with it because they hit really big while they were called Severed Heads. Originally, they would change their name every time they put something out or played live. And so the name that they had right before they called themselves Severed Heads was Mr. and Mrs. Non-Smoking Sign. And so they were kind of like on this like bad name trip. And but unfortunately, they got stuck with Severed Heads when they started to actually have some success.
All right. Well, Jason just fully dumped all of his bands out there.
Yeah,
That's right.
Go ahead. And what else did you have on your plate there, Nate?
I used to exchange music with a guy at work who was always kind of curious about my music taste because he had more like conventional rock and roll taste. And so he'd be like, introduce me to some of the groups you like. And because he would like, I would have like a Skinny Puppy shirt on or something. He'd be like, what the fuck is that? Like, and so my other band is Meat Beat Manifesto because I've had the same reaction from two different people where they were like, this music's cool, all the samples and dub beats, but the name sucks. Like I would never ever go to a record store and stop at Meat Beat Manifesto and want to buy one of their records. That name is just so bad. And so for me, they're an all-time favorite, but I kind of agree the name's kind of bad.
That name's awesome.
it is a great name.
I don't know. I kind of disagree, but for me, it's all about their music.
What Dan Lactose?
I was going really too obscure, and I wanted to try to make it more accessible. So let's see. So a shitty band with a good name. I have Dub Narcotic Sound System, and maybe it's just because the name is extremely misleading. And I will admit that I purchased a Dub Narcotic Sound System CD at one point, expecting it to be some fucking dub, man, on a sound system.
You would think that's in the name, yeah.
And I got some whiny ass white dude whining like a motherfucker. It was white as fuck.
If you know K Records, that's...
Yeah, but K Records has done a couple things kind of out of, that whiny white person thing.
What was he whining about?
Not about Babylon, that's for sure.
No mention of Zion.
Is it the guy's name's Calvin Johnson?
It's like the guy who runs the label, I believe, right?
Yeah, and it's him with actually what's funny is he reminds me of Fred from the B-52s.
yeah. I guess it's not really whiny, it's more like
Dub Narcotic.
Yeah, like in a fake deep voice sort of thing, but yeah.
Well, I mean, in a lot of ways, that's better than a white guy singing in a fake Jamaican accent. So.
Yeah, I guess so.
I had an album of theirs or two. I liked some of their.
You got two?
No, because I actually did kind of dig them for a minute. I think they worked with John Spencer Blues Explosion. So that's how they got on my radar. And then I checked out some. And they actually had a couple jams that I liked, but they were instrumentals. Because his vocals suck. All right, what's your good band with a shitty name?
I had two, but I think I'm gonna go with Rainbow. It's a pretty silly name, man. The band is awesome.
Yeah,
that is a terrible name.
Is it a psychedelic rock band?
Yeah, it's like Dio's band before he did the solo Dio albums with.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
The Man on the Silver Mountain, isn't that
right?
Man on the Silver Mountain. That's
Richie Blackmore's Rainbow, I guess, is the full title of it. The other one I had was Cinderella.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
'Cause I like Cinderella, but man, that's a rough one. What have you been listening to? Oh, Cinderella. The soundtrack, like.
Listening to Cinderella recently. You know, there ain't no ruby slippers or whatever the fuck it was that Cinderella had. Is a weird name. All right, Ramshackle. What do you got?
All right, because I know Dave hates it when people try, so I have a full presentation prepared. See, I was struggling with this. Like, Cinderella is objectively perfect. Like, that just nails it, right? Because it's a fucking horrible name. It's a good band. But I was like, you know, there's a math to this, right? There's got to be a math. So I stood up all night just crunching numbers. I was texting these dudes at like 5 a.m. with my equations. And so here's the example. I wanted to stay mainstream because we got a lot of shit for our cover band thing. Like, people are like, we have no idea what the hell you're talking about. So let's see if I can get this right here. So right here, you have 10,000 Maniacs, right? It's a pretty fucking great name, right? And you can see 10,000 Maniacs has a score of 75 on the very much awesome scale. It goes from like positive 100 to negative 100. And then the extra super shitty for the music. You see the music line going here. You got a negative 55. I mean, it's not the worst music in the world, but it's pretty fucking awful. And so you total up that score of negative 55 plus 75. You take the absolute value, you total that for a score of 130. Anything over 100 is terrible, right? Because they're out of balance. And that's the issue, right? If you have a shitty band with shitty music, it makes sense. You have a great band, a great name, makes sense. So this is my pick. That was just the example to get you guys oriented. All right. Panic at the Disco.
Trouble.
Okay, that's a fucking brilliant name. And it's spelled with a fucking explanation point on the Panic. Now, if you've ever heard this music, it is god fucking awful. It's like this guy, he just preens. And if you've ever heard the song Death of a Bachelor, again, actually a fucking great name for a song, Death of a Bachelor. It sounds like Harry Connick Jr. like fell face first into They Might Be Giants and just only got the awful parts. I encourage anyone to see this. It's fucking terrible. And because their name's Panic at the Disco, every time they come out with a song, I'm just like, okay, maybe this one's going to be good. Never. They have like 10 hits and they're all fucking terrible. Okay, so that's the bad one. And then the other one, and this is I'm not proud of this one. The Beatles. So possibly one of the best bands in the history of mankind, right? I mean, they've endured for decades. They changed their sound like 10 times. Every time, just fucking genius. And their name is almost extra super shitty. So they get a score of 183. And then the bonus, just because this pisses me off almost as much as the Grateful Dead pisses Nate off, is this is just one of the fucking worst band names in the history of mankind. This is just whack. Not to do any more foreshadowing, but Gnarls Barkley might be the fucking dumbest and laziest name in the history of fucking music. Like, can you imagine them going through their fucking like possibilities for a band name? Oh, what about Harry Bird? Oh, maybe Cycle Jordan. Adobe Bryant. You know, like, fuck this. And their music sucks ass. So, anyways, I know we weren't supposed to go there. I just want to show how the math worked, though. When you have shitty music, like, even though it's terrible, it's still at least in balance, giving it a score of 18. All right, thank you.
Can you quickly do a workup on Butthole Surfers for me using this computation?
Great band, great name.
No, I love them, but I just want to know where they'd fall using this
It would literally be the opposite of this. It'd be a fucking great name and a great band.
I don't know. That was one of those bands when I remember first hearing the name. I'm like, you know, in the height of the homophobic 80s and 90s, and you're just like, whoa. Yeah.
I'm truly astounded they found some mainstream success with that name, even for a little while.
It is incredible.
Yeah, they were being played on MTV regularly with that Hurdy-Gurdy Man video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So weird.
It's amazing that Dan had no camera troubles in displaying his formula.
I told you I'm a professional.
Yeah. All right. My choices were well, let's see. So shitty band, good name, was Fine Young Cannibals. Turns out to be a band that sounds more. It should have been, you know, Fine Young Castrated. I don't know. It's just one of those things where the name does sound like something that I would, even though it's like Fine Young Cannibals, you got Fine Young in there. But instead it's the guy with the literally, I've never seen a human being look like he had a beak.
His name is Roland Gift.
I just remember just, just he had the highest of high voices singing very popular pop tunes. You put cannibal in a name, you should sound like somebody that is going to eat other people. That's
also one of the top 10 worst Weird Al covers. She Drives Like Crazy.
Mm-hmm. So really, even their shittiness affected Weird Al.
It did, yeah, dragged him down.
Yeah, Cannibal Corpse definitely sounds more like a band with cannibal in the name should sound, for sure.
Yeah, kind of took it back, if you will. Good band, shitty name. One could make an argument. My favorite band, the Melvins, definitely is in there. The name was what threw me before I even found them, but that's not my pick. And I was half expecting somebody to once again blindside me with that. But
find the hurt spot and don't ever let it heal.
But my pick actually was Pink Floyd, on the other end of the spectrum from Grateful Dead. Very much enjoy Pink Floyd, and I've always thought that name sounds fucking stupid. The band even addresses it in a song. By the way, which one's Pink? Because it sounds like the name of somebody, as Gnarls Barkley. And there isn't somebody in the band named Pink Floyd. I don't know. I'm sure it made sense to these guys at one point or another, and they ran with it. And obviously, it sold millions of albums, so nobody's complaining. I'm complaining. That name sucks. You know what? Maybe if Grateful Dead and Pink Floyd swapped, I think that might be. You might have a good name swap there. If the Grateful Dead were Pink Floyd, and if Pink Floyd were the Grateful Dead, maybe they would sound more appropriate. Got that one out of the way there, like a good bowel movement. And last but not least, our song this week. This is, oddly enough, I never get really any pushback from the group, but this one, so I wanted to pick a hip hop artist that, for the most part, I think most of us respect. One that also has kind of a connection to our guest, Dan Lactose. But my favorite question when I brought him up was, why? Why Kool Keith? And then I had to remind our group, like, why Sophie B. Hawkins? Why any of our fucking picks? Why Doja Cat? Why, we don't have any formula for who we pick. For those who don't know Kool Keith, he's one of the pioneers of hip hop that's kind of underrated. Kool Keith, we're doing his song Goodbye Rap. He puts out like 5 albums a year, practically, it seems like. And but this was from one of his albums in 2011. The reason why I picked that song is because the video and the song were sort of like this, I want to say like a big FU to where hip hop was going. Starting with you, Dan Lactose, your thoughts on Kool Keith's Goodbye Rap?
Well, I've been a Kool Keith fan for a long time, since Ultramagnetic MCs, which was his first group. It was like, if you were a really, really deep rap head, Ultramagnetic MCs was kind of like, oh, you like that Critical Beatdown album? Like, we kind of see eye to eye. It's kind of a trip that he's more famous now, than he was back then, even though that group was very influential. Yeah, I mean, I love Keith, man. I don't necessarily love all the music that he raps over these days, but I get it, because he's just so ahead. He's always been ahead of everything. So I feel like if I don't necessarily like it at the time I hear it, it's just because I don't get it yet, But that song was great. It kind of reminded me of some of the songs on Matthew, which is one of my favorite albums of his, where, it's just like talking shit like the whole song, and like on everybody, not just on one specific thing or person, but just, everything. Even though it hurt when he said Old Man Records and the record collecting, I mean, like, but, I get it, Keith.
Speaking to him being always ahead of everything, I think my favorite thing that I've ever heard Kool Keith say was in an interview. He said that he was so future, he's retro. And I'm not sure quite what that means, but then that's like emblematic of how I feel about Kool Keith. Like I never really know what he's talking about. So this song was kind of refreshing in that he was being very fucking clear that he was just like over everything and that everything is fucking whack. And I just think that's great. But I mean, I love Kool Keith. I think Kool Keith is a fucking genius, and he's such a genius that he's on a level that I can't even comprehend half of what comes out of his mouth. But I love to hear it. So the song is fucking awesome.
My first exposure to Kool Keith was when he came out with an alter ego called Dr. Octagon, and he put out the Octagon Ecologist album. I was never a big hip hop guy, so I didn't know who Kool Keith was when that album came out. I just thought it was a guy called Dr. Octagon. And it was interesting because there used to be an electronic music thing on MTV. Was it called Subsonic or something like that? They played electronic music videos late night on MTV. AMP. Okay, maybe that was it. And I remember them playing the Blue Flowers video on that, and that's how I was introduced to Kool Keith, because otherwise he never would have been on my radar. But for someone like me who's not a huge hip hop guy, that album blew my mind. Like that album, it's like very turntable, like samply, like type album. And that's like an all-time favorite of mine. And I bought Black Elvis, the album I think came out a few years after that, which was okay, but I haven't listened to him in probably 24 years or something like that. So this song seemed like a huge departure from that music he was putting out late 90s. This was like, I have a hard time with Kool Keith, like if he's being serious or just fucking around or a little bit of both, because the music to me was kind of boring. Like I was playing it I had a lull in my work day, and my wife from the other room was like, "What the fuck are you listening to?" and so because I kept going, I don't know if I like this, but my wife kind of confirmed it. She was like, "What the fuck are you listening to?" So it's like something about the piano in it, and it's just got this real sort of slow kind of vibe to it. But I thought the video was fucking comical and so low effort that it was awesome. Like there was something about just like a couple of big booty chicks just kind of hanging out and him repeatedly touching his chin and pointing to the screen. Like that was the vision for the video. Hey dude, touch your chin and point repeatedly and say whack. Like it was, I don't know. I thought it was fucking hilarious. So while I didn't necessarily like the song, I still think Kool Keith fucking rules.
You know, the piano part, it reminds me of when Nordstrom's would have like some guy playing piano in there when you're shopping, you know, and it just keeps going. You're like
So I actually like the piano thing, especially because of the high pitched kind of tinkling, and then just the one note on the really low register. It kind of sounded like someone's rapping over the intro music to Succession, which actually isn't a horrible idea. But I really liked it, and I also like how, like, you know, there's lots of, in hip hop, like there's usually a lot of ass and a lot of thickness, but he was like literally between the hip bone and the knee bone. Like it was only thigh. Like that was it. No interest in any other part of the body. And at the minute 14 mark, I saw a dance move I've never seen in my life. The chick like looked down like, oh man. And then right at the end where you think she's super disappointed, she cracks a smile. I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna steal that one for sure. That's a sick move. So overall, like I think what I took away from it, other than like, and I did like the whack roll call. That was awesome. I could see Dave doing that at like watching aspiring comedians going up and just like mentioning like, yeah, you're set, whack. Your closer.
Yeah, when he dissed on open mic shit, I was like, oh, that's why Dave picked this one.
Yeah. and then finally, like I like the quote, remember that you ain't really fly. That's a great way to end it. So anyways, that was great.
One of the reasons why I picked it was like a turning point, I think, in a lot of hip hop. I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating. I don't really know. But one of the things I love about Kool Keith is he will throw shade a lot of times without seeming like he's throwing shade. But in this song, he's clearly throwing shade. A lot of people thought he was retiring because of the name of the song or whatever. But one of the things I always like about him, the way the Melvins used to like kind of throw people off with their music, I feel like he's doing it in hip hop. He is very much like an artist's artist, I guess. But he described his music in one interview. I love what he said. He goes, "My music's like seltzer water. You know, it's in the fridge and no one wants to drink it when people come over." because I've purchased a lot of his music over the years, and it gets a little minimal. It gets a little like some of his beats don't even have snare drums in it. They'll just have like one something, and he's just rapping over like one sound or whatever. And especially if he's got whole albums that are just dedicated to rapping about ass.
Wait, what album is that? Just for future reference, I'm curious.
It's in my
Bankmaster.
No, there's a trilogy album that it was a box set, because like it's not Demolition Crash. It's because he's got like 3 box sets that I have Demolition Crash, which is actually a double disc, and then he has the Lost records. I got way too many Kool Keith albums, and I don't listen to them nearly enough.
I think he's like the guy who invented the this is my last album, I'm retiring. That whole sentiment. I think he was kind of the first person to be like, I quit rap, and then come out with another thing, like the next month.
He also was like the first to have 1 million fucking names or identities, because that's
so he did I don't know if you have the Cenobites album, Dave, that he did with Godfather Don, who is one of my favorite rapper producers from Brooklyn, and they were kind of really integral in that Stretch and Bobbito era in New York on the radio. And they were constantly calling in, and they started making songs just for the radio show. And then the Cenobites album is kind of a collection of that. But in an interview with Don says, he had a deal, he did an album, it didn't do very well, he was kind of bummed out, and he was like, well, I don't know about this rap thing, because Godfather Don, interestingly enough, is actually like comes from a metal background, and it's like a guitarist who then got into rap. But he met Keith, and Keith's like, well, but you could be anybody, man. You could call yourself anybody, and you could rap like that person, and then you could write a rap like this person. And that kind of was like very, that just got Dom back in the game. And he's like, okay. So, that whole like kind of persona rap, he probably developed that, Yeah,
because he was the first that like it made it early MTV hip hop world. They would actually announce that like Kool Keith is now changing his name to Black Elvis. Kind of similarly, my introduction to him was more through a video game that Blue Flowers was on from the Dr. Octagon album. And that was when I was video game testing, and the song itself, I was just like, this is unusual. Like, and then a lot of people knew of Dr. Octagon at that time. It was like 98, 99. I think it was more through knowing you, Dan, when I started kind of investigating Kool Keith stuff more, and because of the Ultramagnetic MCs. Just looking back on it, because I got into Wu-Tang. Wu-Tang, one of their characteristics is they all have 1 million fucking names. Well, then in learning more about Kool Keith not only just had different names, but he created whole identities around them with, Black Elvis, Dr. Doom, Dr. Octagon, and would create album concepts with it. But he would just keep going. And then he was also the guy that, from what I understand, might have been the first to introduce what they call porno rap with his album Sex Styles, which is probably one of my favorite albums that he's done. And I don't really care so much about the sex stuff. The beats on it are really dope.
I think that's with Cutmaster Kurt. It's kind of funny because Automator's from the Bay Area. Kurt was originally from the Bay Area too, even though he's down in LA. And then Keith did a project with this guy Tom C, who's from Belmont, called Project Polaroid. And it's just kind of weird how he's very present in like Bay Area, and I've heard him say he really likes E40 too. Like for years, I've always seen him say, oh man, E40, have all his CDs. Another interesting Kool Keith trivia thing is that Ultramagnetic MCs used to work with this producer named Paul C, and Paul C was murdered, and they never solved it. So it was kind of one of the first unsolved hip hop murders, and it's still unsolved to this day. He was a white producer who worked with Organized Confusion and Eric B. and Rakim, and he's kind of famous for innovating a bunch of drum machine stuff, but yeah, just like an unsolved hip hop murder.
Kool Keith probably killed him.
A trendsetter in hip hop.
Yeah,
Hell
before
yeah,
Tupac and Biggie, you know.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite things he did was there was like on a radio show, him and Exhibit.
Oh man, that's so good.
It's one of the funniest things you'll hear of, like, they're not battling. They're trying to have a cipher, but in the middle of throughout the cipher, like I think Keith is actually DJing it, and Exhibit is stoked to meet him, stoked to, be there. You can hear Exhibit's just all fucking loving being there with them, and Keith is clearly talking shit through his like crypticness. He calls him Everlast. He keeps calling Exhibit Everlast, and Exhibit is trying his best to not be offended. Then he starts spitting, and what's funny, you hear Exhibit, who's doing conventional, doing a conventional rap with his cipher. And he's a good rapper in his own right, but Kool Keith just starts spitting these weird ass fucking rhymes through the whole thing, and is continuing to talk shit throughout his rhymes. So yeah, it was one of the weirdest.
At one point, doesn't he just start counting?
Yeah, that's right. He just starts counting, rapping, just numbers, just counting up.
You gotta hear it. It's hilarious.
So again, with this song, Goodbye Rap, it's not even like a fuck you as much as like, why are you even trying? I don't know. It's like he seemed exhausted with rap in itself. Nate pointed it out earlier. It was like the seemingly lack of effort, where it's like he's putting effort into this, but it's clearly like something where it's almost like I can do this in my sleep, and I'm going to.
The song was a perfect length for having this pace. Like, at least it wasn't like a 5-minute long song, because that would have been like, oh, fuck. But it was the perfect length for having this pace.
It would have been great if your wife just listened, like came in like, whack, like just out of He's schizophrenic too. He actually got put in, he locked himself up, or he got 5150'd at one point. Dan, do you know about that?
Yeah, he was supposedly in Bellevue is what I heard. I think the thing with Keith, is like, you have to take the album or the project like as a whole. He's not making like singles. You know what I mean? Like, I think he approaches it as this is going to be this concept. He's not just recording 100 songs and saying, okay, these go here, Yeah,
the name of that album, or the sex rap, or the porno rap out collection, was Total Orgasm. That was the name of it.
Never heard of that one.
Get ton of songs on every CD. All, like, barely any of them are that catchy. All of them about sex. It came with a Kool Keith condom.
That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, if you need one, I mean, it's there. Love and Danger. That's the name of the album that Goodbye Rap was on. Dan actually met him too. Dan met him. That was the other reason why I wanted to bring up Kool Keith. He met Kool Keith and confirmed he is in fact cool.
Yeah, I was actually at one of the recording sessions for Dr. Octagon, because Dan the Automator is a childhood friend of a friend of mine who diehard like metal dude who wrote for Maximum Rock and Roll. I don't think he wants me to say his name, but yeah, so he called me. He actually called Max and said, hey, Keith's over at Dan's house. Like, do you want to meet him? And Max was like, oh man, I got to go to school tonight. So Max called me and was like, hey, do you want to meet Kool Keith tonight? I was like, where? Hopped in my car, drove up to San Francisco, and yeah, met him, got him to do that. I had an opportunity to play him some spaz stuff that we were working on, and he was asking me, the band he asked me about, he was like, do you listen to Gorefest? And I was like, holy shit. No, not really. He's like, what about Autopsy? I was like, oh, they're from here. And he was like, can you make this sound on this record? Like the sound of spaz. And I was like, oh yeah, man, I could totally do that. So I was like, can I get you to do a shout out for this record we're making? And that's how I got the little thing that we have on our second album where Keith introduces us. Funny thing about that is Dan the Automator was not happy that I was there. And so the more I was distracting Keith from recording, I could tell the more he was getting frustrated. And so that's why the sample on the tape, Keith's already talking. If you listen to the Spaz record, it's like his voice kind of comes in already speaking. And that was because Dan was just like, yeah, whatever, put the tape and record. I was like, go for it. You know, he just...
I know Dave doesn't want to be a one-upper, but Dave did meet MC Hammer in a bathroom, and he really...
Not the same thing at all. All right.
He's like, I can meet MC Hammer where? I'm there. And so Dave like...
Wait, what kind of pants did he have on?
Randomest of things. I was on a date with actually with a girl that Ramshackle set me up with, and we were seeing Grease, the re-release of Grease, which was clearly her idea. And I went to the bathroom, and there was a guy working on his hair. This was during his broke period. This is the late 90s. This is like 1997 or 98. So he has no fortune. From what I understood, he was living in Tracy, but would visit the Fremont area because his kids were still out here. So I'm at Cinedome East. Remember when Cinedome East used to be there? Over there on the east side of 880. So I'm over there, and I go to the bathroom, and there's a guy just working on his hair. I pay no attention to him. I'm peeing, and then I come back from the urinal, and he's still working on his hair. And that's when I look closer at him. And I just said out loud as I'm thinking it, I'm like, Hammer? And he turned to me in this, like he was on autopilot, turns to me, grabs my right hand, just grabs it with both his hands. He goes, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. And he leaves. And he wasn't like running from me. He genuinely greeted me as if I was an MC Hammer fan at like a fan fest or some shit. But he grabbed my right hand and shook it with both his hands and left. And I'm like, I haven't even washed my fucking hand.
Oh, also, you hadn't put your dick away either.
Exactly. No, and then I think what was it, Dan? Or Ramshackle? Your joke was, and he never washed it since. So that's
dude. You've got to embellish that story. And then MC Hammer grabbed my hand and said, "Proper," and bounced.
Too legit. Yeah. No, I didn't know. No, it was one of those moments because I really never cared when he was, even at the height of his career. You know, I want to say like MC Hammer is definitely somebody I would love to hear Kool Keith's thoughts on, because MC Hammer, what's funny about him, I think he's cooler more from hearing that how he used to when people would talk shit about him in raps, he actually got hood people to like threaten them. This is long before like really beefs got like really popular, but if anybody talked shit about Hammer, he would have some thugs fuck with him. And of all people, you know, the family friendly dance rapper would be like, keep my name out your mouth. Awesome episode. I want to thank our guest panelist, Dan Lactose, for joining us here on Meaningful Times with Friends.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ramshackle Dan, Nathan from Newark, Jason. Right on. We'll see you again. Peace.
Whack. 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 Whack.